Read all this stuff. Or that you're nicer to the whites in your audience than you are to the blacks.
I used to be very hurt by it, and I used to always think that I had to defend it and always make people know that, yes, I really am black and I really am proud of it. And no, I'm not an Oreo at all. I don't feel that anymore. I don't feel it anymore. Because I know in my spirit that I care about what happens to black people and people in this country.
Did you ever wish you were white?
As a little girl, I wanted to be yeah, I did. I was growing up in Mississippi, and it's the kind of thing that I hesitate to say because when you say it, all the black groups call you and say, how dare you say it? But yes, I did. And I did now, I understand, not because, you know, white is better, but because in my mind then, white kids were loved more, they received more, their parents were nicer to them. And so I wanted that kind of life. I wanted to be one.
Let's talk about what's happening with Harvey Weinstein. I know you posted on Facebook already, but you haven't kind of spoken yet publicly about what's going on.
I think that this is, I'm always trying to look for the rainbow in the cloud, whatever is the silver lining. And this is what I do know for sure. When something this major happens, when you have the fallout, 50 women coming forward, that it's a watershed moment. And what I do believe is actually happening is that, first of all, it's triggering a lot of unreleased pain, repressed anger, guilt, and suffering that a lot of women have had. I happened to be on set with several actresses the other day, and we were filming some things, and they were like, hadn't slept over a period of 2 or 3 days, and I was like, what is that? I said, oh, you guys are suffering from PTSD.
And when you start talking about it out loud, too,
everybody has a story. Everybody has a story. And so I think this is a watershed moment. And if we make this just about Harvey Weinstein, then we will have lost this moment. I think this is a moment where no matter what business you work in, there have been women who not only had the disease to please, that's a part of it, but who felt that in order to keep my job, in order to keep my position, in order to keep moving forward, I've got to smile, I've got to look the other way, I got to pretend he didn't say that, I got to pretend he didn't touch me. I think those days are about to be over.
Are over. And if it happens to you back in the day, you would say, sometimes you're not even aware what he just said wasn't really inappropriate.
I know you've had a couple moments.
Where you just think, what did he just say?
Yes, I remember Gail had a moment when she came and said to me what somebody said that was so inappropriate. I was like, oh my God, you can sue over that. But
no, and all I said was, what did you say? And then they repeated it.
Yes.
It's terrible. I just sat there typing with my 20-something-year-old.
You pretend you didn't hear it.
Yes.
You pretend it's okay. You pretend you didn't.
No, it isn't. You're right, Jeff. It absolutely, you're absolutely right.
But a lot of women have been silenced, and I know.
But I do think it's going to change.
Being a victim of child sexual abuse, that when you feel like you cannot be heard, and then other people start speaking out, it makes you feel like, oh, now I can. The only question for me is, what is the right thing to do?
Oprah Winfrey on CBS saying she knew her decision to pull out of a documentary about allegations against Russell Simmons would look bad.
I unequivocally say that I did not pull out because of Russell. This is not a victory lap for him. I cannot be silenced by a Russell Simmons.
Oprah says she believes the women featured in the film on the record.
I stand in support of these women.
But she also says she worried about inconsistencies in accusers' stories and told the filmmakers Amy Ziering and Kirby Dick she wanted changes and didn't want to rush to premiere at the Sundance Film Festival.
I thought some things were not right. I wanted the context of the story to be broadened. I wanted more women brought into the story.
The New York Times reports Oprah left the project after showing the documentary to director Ava DuVernay, who gave a harsh critique. In December, Simmons posted this video questioning his accuser's credibility on Instagram.
Fame and fortune are catalysts for untrue accusations.
In an open letter to Oprah, he said, "I have never been violent or forced myself on anyone."
He has millions of followers. I have like 1,000. And he is using all of that muscle to try to drown out our voices.
Drew Dixon is an accuser at the center of the new film. After Oprah's withdrawal, she told the New York Times, "I am being silenced. The most powerful black woman in the world is being intimidated."
I do hope people will see the film.
Refinery 29 journalist Ariana Davis spoke with CBS This Morning's Gayle King about a range of topics that included sexual harassment. Gayle shared an anchor desk with Charlie Rose, who was recently fired amid sexual assault allegations. Oprah's bestie says that she's still trying to process Charlie's departure and feels a sense of loss. She explained, "As painful as that is, I'm still a woman, so I'm glad that if there's anything good that's come out of this." Gayle was also friendly with Harvey Weinstein, who was linked to multiple sexual misconduct charges. She added, "When they say it was an open secret and everybody knew, I wasn't one of them."
Which was dismissed in 2003, 2004. Is it complicated for you as a woman, as a WNBA player?
It's not complicated for me at all. Even if there's a few times that we've been at a club at the same time. Kobe's not the kind of guy, never been like, you know, Lisa, go get that girl or tell her or send her this. I have other NBA friends that are like that. Kobe's, he was never like that. I just never have ever seen him being the kind of person that would do something to violate a woman or be aggressive in that way. That's just not the person that I know.
But Lisa, you wouldn't see it though. As his friend, you wouldn't see it.
And that's possible. I just don't believe that. And I'm not saying things didn't happen. I just don't believe that things didn't happen with force.
Is it even a fair question to talk about it, considering he's no longer with us and that it was resolved? Or is it really part of his history?
I think that the media should be more respectful. At this time, it's like if you had questions about it, you've had many years to ask him that. I don't think it's something that we should keep hanging over his legacy. I mean, it went to trial.
Yeah, well, it was dismissed because the victim in the case refused to testify, so it was dismissed.
And I think that's how we should leave it.
When you were Attorney General, you opposed a legislation that would have required your office to investigate fatal shootings involving police officers. Why did you oppose that bill?
So I did not oppose the bill. I had a process when I was Attorney General of not weighing in on bills and initiatives because as Attorney General, I had a responsibility for writing the title and summary.
Senator Harris had a CNN town hall event. At one point, Tapper is delving into her tenure as California's Attorney General, and that's sort of a tough position to be in, as a Democrat particularly, because as the Attorney General, you are in charge of the well-being and the professional development and the success of all the police officers in the state. And on the other hand, the base voters of the Democratic Party were really seizing on the issue of police use of force around the same time that Harris was in office. One of the criticisms that has been leveled against her was that she never took a position on a bill to require an independent investigation when there's a fatal shooting by police officers. This is the issue when you talk about Ferguson, when you talk about Eric Garner, when you talk about any number of black men usually who are unarmed, who are shot by police officers. There's often an accountability gap in the results that happen when you investigate these things. Harris did not take a position on the bill, and Tapper asked about it. Why didn't you take a position on this bill? Why did you oppose it? And Harris said, actually, I didn't oppose it. My job as Attorney General meant that I had to write some pieces of the legislation, the title and the summary. And so my process was not to comment and not to take a position. But you look at the website for the California Attorney General, and we found like 20 news releases or more where she was taking a position either in favor or against some kind of measure that was in the legislature. So it didn't add up to us, and we checked with them. And what they said was, okay, so she misheard Jake Tapper's question, and she gave a response that was not apt. As it is, California has local district attorneys investigate, when there's a shooting. Harris herself is the former district attorney for San Francisco. And so she said, I was concerned that, those district attorneys are accountable to local voters. The voters can make a change here if something happens that they don't like, and it's not as easy to make that change, if you sort of shift this process over to the state attorney general. Her staff, and they walk you through all the nuance, and it adds up, what they're saying, but it's still worth fact-checking because this town hall was one of her first big exposures as a presidential candidate.
Do you support reparations for Black people?
Well, listen, again, we had over 200 years of slavery. We had Jim Crow for almost a century. We had legalized discrimination, segregation, and now we have segregation and discrimination that is not legal but still exists and is a barrier to progress. We have disparities around housing. We have disparities around education. We have disparities around income. And we have to recognize that everybody did not start out on an equal footing in this country. And in particular, Black people have not. And so we have got to recognize that and do something about that and give folks a lift up. That's why, for example, I'm proposing the LIFT Act. Give people who are making $100,000 or less as a family a tax credit, which will benefit and uplift 60% of Black families who are in poverty.
So by default, it affects Black families, but there's not a particular policy for African Americans that you would explore.
But no, if you look at the reality of who will benefit from certain policies, when you take into account that they're not starting at the same place and they're not starting on equal footing, it will directly benefit Black children, Black families, Black homeowners, because the disparities are so significant. So if we focus on the specific issues that have resulted in the greatest disparities, and we understand that that's part of why we're doing it. Listen, the reality also is this: any policy that will benefit Black people will benefit all of society. Let's be clear about that. Let's really be clear about that. So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to do something that's only going to benefit Black people. No, because whatever benefits that Black family will benefit that community and society as a whole and the country, right?
Judges down there talking to Amber, I just don't think I've ever seen anything quite like this. What do you think's happening right now?
I have no idea, quite honestly. I've never seen anything like this.
We've lost sound. Okay, so this is extraordinary. I feel like we're watching something that I've never seen before. I mean, this moment, the hug between Amber Geiger and Botham Jean's brother, and now the judge. It sounded like maybe she was reading a Bible scripture or witnessing somehow. I mean, it's just oh my God, now the judge is hugging Amber Geiger. Okay, this is, I'm starting to lose it again.
Well, and I think that the emotional aspects of this case, and again, without question, it's a tragedy all the way around. The emotional aspects of his case have led to the judge to do something that's very unusual, to have direct attempts to communicate with the family of the victim and the defendant herself on the record, and what I can only suppose is an attempt to try to start some healing for these people. It certainly is difficult, it certainly is extraordinary, it certainly is unusual. It is something that I don't know that I've ever seen before in a trial, this kind of direct communication.
And by the way,
person.
my Facebook commenters are saying that the judge gave Amber Geiger a Bible.
And again, I think this is her attempt to try to let there begin some healing.
I'm really having a hard time holding it together here because it's something.
There's a lot of powerful emotion involved in the case for sure, and anytime you see somebody willing to go above and beyond the easy anger, retribution, emotional reaction, that's inspiring. That's something,
you know, from a Christian perspective, that's the Old Testament, the angry God. You know, from a Christian perspective, it's love and forgiveness and loving your neighbor as yourself. It's just, it's an amazing thing that we're witnessing in this courtroom.
And again, a true Christian approach to life and to people is that forgiveness, that true ability to be selfless and give, and that certainly was done by the Jean family.
In the Black community, I want to, I don't speak for the Black community, but I do think that a lot of Black men, they really don't know how to have true, faithful relationships. They think because they have money, because they have power, that they can treat women any kind of way.
Lonnie Love is saying things.
And that is something we need to work on. We need to work on that money and power does not mean that you can just do whatever you want to do.
I think sadly in so many cultures that is the whole machismo thing, like that goes across the board, but I'm gonna say...
No, it's not across the board, because what is happening is that we are still dealing with the point of slavery, and we are descendants of slavery, and because our families were broken up, we still do not have an idea of how to have together families, because our families were broken up.
Yes,
and until we really
from that perspective, I absolutely
And not
get
just
that.
slavery, welfare reform in the 60s and 70s. Like, this is a long...
So when you